Welcome back to the fifth video of the SD-Branch from Scratch video series. My name is Mitchell, and in this video I'll talk about the Microbranch deployment and configuration. But first, let's head over to the topology view. As you can see over here, we've deployed in the last video the branch location for a full SD-Branch environment. But now we'll head over to the Microbranch and we'll connect that to the internet. And this Microbranch will then set up a VPN tunnel to our first VPNC and then a backup connection for the VPNC number 2, which will only become active once the first VPN tunnel will go down. Apart from that, let's head over to which devices you can actually use for your Microbranch. And being honest, you can just use any Aruba AP with multiple ports, but it is advised to use a remote AP or hospitality X-point because those APs have more ports. This means that you can connect the AP to either one or two internet lines, but also, for example, connect that particular printer or VoIP phone with power out from the PoE in. Of course, you can also use your existing access point with maybe two Ethernet ports, where you would use Ethernet port 0 for the internet connection and Ethernet 1 as a relay point to a switch, for example, or just one computer. But in most scenarios, it's advisable to use the remote AP or hospitality line APs. Then it's also good to note that there are different types of operations for the Microbranch. And the first one is called local, and this means that the instant AP will only give out a local IP address which is not part of your enterprise infrastructure. So this means that these devices with a local IP address would not be able to communicate to the data center. So for this particular series, that might be good for guest access, for example, but not necessarily for corporate clients. With the layer 2 extension, clients at the Microbranch will receive an IP address from the shared VLAN in the data center, and then all the traffic from these clients will be tunneled directly over that L2 GRE tunnel back to the data center. And internet-bound traffic will be source netted out of the instant AP. The other type of deployment will be layer 3 routed subnets, where your corporate devices, their regular internet traffic will get source netted out of the internet port directly, but data center destinations will be routed back to the data center to be processed there further. So in this particular video, I'll focus on layer 3's routed subnets, and let's just configure that now. As you might have noticed, I've created a new site location for these Microbranches. And the first thing that I'll do now is create a new configuration group, because we've already have the ABC branch and ABC-data center. And from a management perspective, it makes more sense to separate these configurations from one another. So what I'll do is head over to our organization and create a new group called ABC-Microbranch. Fill in the password, and my AP303H is already subscribed and added into the inventory and live in central, as you can see over here, set me up. So what I'll do is I'm gonna drag and drop, it's currently in the default group, and I'll just drag and drop it to the ABC Microbranch so we can begin the configuration for this instant AP. So now that it's added into the group, we can verify that under devices. Sure enough, we have the device over here. It's connected under a public IP address. And now I'll start the configuration of the Microbranch. And the first thing that you'll need to do is configure the country code. And this can be done on a group configuration level. But if you have Microbranch deployments across multiple countries, you can do an override on the per virtual controller. So every Microbranch location will be a separate entry over here in the virtual country. But I'll select Netherlands over here and fill in some information such as time zone, NTP server. And I'll allow URL visibility as well. And click on Save Settings. So before I'm going to configure the VPN settings and make sure that the Microbranch will connect to the both VPNCs, I'll first go to the data center group to make the mandatory changes on our VPN concentrators. And really the only thing that we need to do over there is make sure that Aruba Central authorizes the microbranches, as well as that the VPN concentrators will give out IP addresses in the form of IP pools for the VPN connections. So I'll head over to VPN, General VPN, and then create a pool name called Microbranch. And 100 is used for our branch gateways, 101 for our data center, and I'll use 102.1 to 104.254 to make sure that we have enough IP addresses accommodated for our branches or micro branches, and then save settings. The next thing to do here is select security to authorize or make sure that Aruba Central authorizes the new microbranch locations, and we'll do that by going to layer 3 authentication, click on VPN authentication, and then default IAP. Go to server group and select from default to internal. Now that it is done, I can configure the VPN settings on our group level for the microbranches. So I'll cancel this out and switch to advanced mode and then VPN. Over here, the protocol will be Aruba IPsec, and here I need to fill in the public IP addresses of the VPN concentrators, which will be for the primary host a VPN concentrator, and for the second VPN concentrator will be 130. Enable preemption, fast failover, and reconnect user on. Just enable and tick these boxes, click Save Settings, and the next thing that we'll do is configure the routing as well. So what we'll do is these particular clients, client traffic will be routed for now. I'll just select the data center web server segment, which will be 10.90.100/24. So net mask. And the gateway for these VPN concentrators is not necessarily the public IP address, but will be the loopback IP address that we've configured as management central. So that will be 165.101.1, and create a second entry for VPNC number 2. Now that I've configured this, it's time to create the configuration for our WLAN and wired interfaces. So I'll head over to System and click on DHCP. And here are the different options, like the local DHCP scope for guest access, for example. But I'll click on distributed DHCP scope. So this means that our VPN concentrators will do the dividing of the subnet that we're going to choose. And for this, we'll be using distributed layer 3. I'll call this Microbranch Corp and give the VLAN 120. And for this is the DNS server, which is really the corporate DNS server. So this means that for these particular clients, only the corporate destinations will head over to this DNS server if we define our enterprise domain. And if the enterprise domain does not match, then the instance will relay the DNS request to the DNS server that the instance received based off on the DHCP parameters. So DNS server will be 10.90.100.2. And the IP address to 25.254, which is a big chunk of a subnet. And if I click on next, I can determine how many clients will be available, or at least the IP addresses will be allocated from this particular subnet. So for now, I'll select 30. And then I can reserve some IP addresses in the beginning and the end. Click on Finish. And that's all that we need to do in terms of subnetting for all our locations. Really easy. So now that I've defined this, I'll attach this particular DHCP scope to my WLAN as well as the wired interface. So create an SSID called Microbranch-Corp make sure that I only deny 802.11b clients. And over here, if I select instant AP assigned and then custom, this is the DHP scope over here that we've just defined. Obviously, for corporate access, you should configure enterprise security level. For the speed of this particular video, I'll just configure a personal network. And click on next and finish. Now that's done, I'll do the same for the wired interface and create a wired port profile, which I then will attach to Ethernet 0/2. Call this Microbranch-corp wired and enable content filtering. For now, I'll make it an access port for this particular VLAN. Make sure that you don't tick the box port type trusted, because if the port is untrusted, like now, the connected clients will actually end up in the client table. If you make this port trusted, the clients connected to your wired interface will not show up in your user table. So click on next and finish. And then I'm basically done with the configuration. So let's take a look at the instant AP to see if we've already established some VPN tunnels. By going to monitoring here. And sure enough, the AP is up and the NTP server that we've configured is also up. Heading over to the tunnels. And sure enough, the VPN tunnels are up as well. I can check the same in our route table, for example, for the VPN concentrator. So VPN concentrator number 1, and then route table. Like so, and sure enough, we have our route over here. When clients get connected, and like here, we also have the rep-ng subnet. So the only thing to do now from the data center perspective is, now that we have this particular route, we need to exchange it to the data center. And we do that on a group level as well, because we would like to distribute those particular routes on VPN-C 1 as VPN-C 2 as well. So going to ABCDC, device, select gateway, and then the advanced tab. So all these settings will be configured under the routing tab. Let's first do the BGP part. So this means that the routes that we have learned will be redistributed into the BGP with our upstream routers. So I've already configured the SD-WAN from our 9004 branches, the connected interface of the VPN concentrators, and now I'll do the same for the IAP-VPN overlay. Click on Save Settings. And now these routes that we've learned will also be advertised into the BGP, as well as the overlay routing, where, for example, our branch locations with the 9004 should also be able to communicate to our microbranches, for example. Then I would just select IAP-VPN overlay, and now this will also these microbranches will also be advertised to our branch locations as well. And now I can check on the data center core router that we have our 10.90.100 subnet over here, which we are able to ping from the client. But also let's take a look at the route table of the BGP as well, that we have received the 10.70.20 also from our VPN-C concentrator as well. So now that it's done, let's head over to ABC Microbranch, devices, and head over to the settings, because I'm afraid that I've missed one setting, because now the traffic will be able to reach the data center. We've also configured the DNS server, but not really the enterprise domain. And this is necessary to reroute the traffic to really define which DNS FQDNs should be routed to our data center DNS server, and that will be SD-Branch.local. So now that I've done this, click on Save Settings. I'll try to connect with the wireless SSID. So now I'm connected to the Microbranch Corp SSID, as well as you can see the configure DNS, as well the corporate DNS server. So I'll head over to Net Analyzer to see if I can ping the web server as well. First the router, and that one responds. And let's try the web server, and that gives a response as well. So let's take a look at our corporate DNS server, if that is also working. So that will be corp.sdbranch.local. And let's see if that resolves. Sure enough, that looks to be good as well. So let's try to access the web page presented on or hosted on this particular server. That will be corp.sdbranch.local. And sure enough, I can now access this particular web server. We can track this particular user accessing the web server by going to the AP or just clients in the overview setting. Clients. And we have a wired client. Let's take a look at the iPhone. We're connected to SSID and then the AP connectivity, but as well as the sessions. And sure enough, we have our session over here, 1090.100.2. So this is our web server, which looks good. So now let's do some additional configuration on our microbranch. We can turn on, for example, application visibility by going to Services, AppRef, and the packet inspection to make sure that we have some visibility and intel about which applications are being used on our network. And now it's time to also make sure that internet destinations cannot access our microbranch location. And we can do that by going to Security, Wireless IDS IPS, and then Firewall Settings. And here we can define an access rule, which is really for non-wireless or wired users behind the instant AP. So this means that will, in this scenario, that will mean that the internet link connected to Ethernet 1 or 0 would fall under the inbound firewall. And here I would allow DHP. And make that the only rule. So there's an implicit deny at the bottom. And now every connection to this particular instant AP will be blocked, with the exception of SSH and HTTPS, which can be configured as a management subnet and to only permit that from particular subnets. So I'll select 10.90.100/24 for the subnet mask. So now only this particular subnet mask will be able to SSH into the box, for example, and then save the settings. We can do the same for our wireless and wired users as well. Here we can define that, for example, if I would go to Net Analyzer and ping instant.arubanetworks.com, I can demonstrate to you that after setting the firewall rules, we can no longer access this particular microbranch. But the client will still have full access to the internet, only not the management of the instant. So going to access, network-based, and then add 2 rules to deny traffic to the AP network or to the AP IP, but also deny traffic to the master AP. Click on OK. And by now, sure enough, we can see that we can no longer access this particular instant AP, but we could still access bbc.com, for example, or Amazon. So that works. We'll do the same for our wired interfaces as well. Go to Access, Network-based. After configuring the port profile, you should then attach it to an Ethernet port. So now that's done, let's take a look again at our client to see if we have any additional information now of the used applications. So I can go to Sessions, And by now we have some more information about the different types of applications that have been used by this particular client. And that's a wrap. This was the 5th video of the SD-Branch from Scratch series. In this video we covered the configuration of a microbranch. This configuration allows us to deploy hundreds of remote locations from this point on. In the next video we'll cover once again a different subject, the VPN client, which is called the Aruba Virtual Intranet Access Client, or Aruba VIA in short. Per the usual, I hope you found this video informative. If you want to receive updates and would like to see more of these videos, like and subscribe, and feel free to leave any questions or comments below this video.